Hi there, I'm Watchin, founder and CEO of I Choose the Ladder, and I want to welcome you to the C-Suite Cheat Code, a show where we pull the curtain back on the unwritten rules of corporate America and give you the cheat codes to reconstructing the corporate ladder. First item on our meeting agenda, being Black at work. Next, we'll head on over to my favorite place in the world, the internet, where I will share my favorite post of the week. Then we will head on over to the cheat code for a conversation with Tatiana Childhood, the head of social media at Hulu. And lastly, we'll head on over to the hot seat where I will answer your questions. Today, we're talking about being interviewed for your first executive role and where to take client meetings. Clearly, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. Okay, in case you missed it, corporations are doing tons to show their Black employees that they are valued and that they want them to be there. The problem is their Black employees are saying, not quite feeling the love. And so there is some frustrations around decision makers because they feel like they are trying everything. And for whatever reason, their employees are still not happy. And so there was a survey, an interview that I read called, "What Do Black Executives Really Want?" And it was a conversation with some executives at blue chip companies about what the problem is and why they don't seem fulfilled, even though corporations are starting to put a lot more of a focus and financial resources towards retaining them. The hot take, Black executives are saying that they're just not feeling the love because the current approach that is workshops and trainings and all of those things, they're a great start, but they don't address the core of what the challenges are. So what are those challenges, you ask? So socially, Black young executives just don't feel included in the conversation. Often they felt left out, or that their colleagues make an effort to get to know each other, but not necessarily the things that interest their Black employees. And so they feel left out of the conversation, and socially, they're just not interested in doing those things any longer. Next, the code switching, feeling like in order to be accepted or seen and valued at work, that you have to leave so much of yourself at home, right? We don't address those things as we talk about D&I and the impact that it has on the mental safety of the Black people who work for you. The fourth thing was that they feel like they're being tolerated. Like people don't really want them there, but they understand for business or for the appearance of being diverse that they have to be there. And so people make an effort to let them be tolerated and sit in those seats, but they don't really include them or want them in those spaces. And the last part of it is the microaggressions, right? So the slick comments, one of the parts of the interview was someone, a Black person whose white colleague was surprised that they were actually a CPA and that they had passed the exams, right? And that is not something that they would say about a white colleague, for example. So always being questioned, their credibility being questioned, and just feeling like there's not any initiatives that are addressing those things. Most of the initiatives are around helping Black folks adjust to the current climate that is in corporate and not necessarily educating white folks on how to be better teammates to people of different backgrounds. So what can employers do? Create environments that don't put the pressure on Black folks and people of color to conform, but take equally an active role to train your managers, your senior leaders to be able to work well with and create environments where everybody feels like they have a place, and they may not all be at the table, but since they're all in the house, they need to feel like there is a place for them in that space. And now we head on over to my favorite place in the world, the internet. And today we are talking about equity, right? So the post that I saw that really struck with me was the definition of equity, right? And it says, equity doesn't mean that we give everyone the same. Equity means that we give more to those who needs more. And as we start to think about how we equalize the playing field in corporate America and how do we make our employees feel valued, we have to understand that they don't all need the same kinds of resources. And it's up to us, if we are really striving for equity, to make sure that the people who need to stand on a brick have a brick, the people who need to stand on a wall have a wall, and the people who need to stand on shoulders also have access to those resources. So as you look at your equity practices, how are you ensuring that the people who need different kinds of resources actually get those resources? In today's cheat code, we are talking to Tatiana Childhood, a former sports executive who is now killing it in the digital space at Hulu. She's overseeing social media, so everything that you see on the web, her teams produce and put out into the world. And so she is dropping lots of gems in this cheat code. So grab your I Choose the Ladder notebook, a pen, and your favorite beverage, and get ready to get these gems. Hey, Tatiana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat with you today.
Listen, so since the I Choose the Ladder Career Summit, people have been asking me about you, getting you on this podcast. I'm like, y'all, she got a job. She got a whole job with the Pacers Entertainment Group in Indianapolis. Like, I'm going to try my best to get her here. So, y'all, she's here. Tatiana is here, people.
Thank you.
You know, like you've done a ton, you've pivoted, and we'll get to that stuff. But can you think back to like your first job in corporate America? How did you get it? Did you have parents who were like, hey, this is the route to go, I will help you? Like, how did you get that job?
Yeah, let me tell you, first of all, I do not have a silver spoon, probably never will. I come from a single mother household. My mom and dad split when I was young, probably around 7 years old. My dad was in the military, and my mom raised my sister and I on her own. And let me tell you, my mother was a cleaning lady. She would clean the apartment complex that we lived in to make a living. And I think it's because of her that I learned how to work hard. Mm-hmm. And it was that drive and that motivation to just, do what you have to do to provide for yourself. Mm-hmm. And no shade to my dad, but I also learned not to rely on a man for anything. And so as a female, I, learned that you got to go out and get it. And so that's always been my mentality. And I think that has continued to live with me throughout my entire career.
Well, so how does someone go from being raised by a mom who's a cleaning lady to now being the vice president and head of digital and social media strategy for the Pacers Sports and Entertainment Group? I feel like that's a huge leap, right? So how did you even know that corporate America was a thing that you could pursue?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it's nothing but God. I have to just say that. But, I put myself through college. I decided pretty early on that I knew I wanted to go to college. I had some teachers in high school who told me, you would be great in television. And I was like, television, really? Like, no, I'm not interested in being on air. Like, I just don't have that, like, in front of the camera vibe. And that wasn't my thing. And so they said, well, you know what? You should try it and check it out. And so those teachers actually persuaded me to look into Columbia College Chicago. And that's what made me go to that school and major in media management and arts and entertainment. And I always had a passion for TV in general because I just loved watching TV as a kid. But I knew I didn't want to be on air. As I was working throughout my entire career, as I mentioned, my mom was a single mother. So I was working a full-time job at the age of 15, working at Taco Bell. Actually, it was my first job. And I realized that for me, I liked being around people. So when I started looking at colleges and looking at Columbia College, I was trying to find out, how do I marry my two loves? One was television and one was being around people, which I finally realized was management. So Columbia College has a huge arts entrepreneurship media management program. And I was like, perfect, that's for me. During that time, I learned all about the TV industry and things like that. And I realized that marketing is more of my thing because I'm creative. And so where I had some professors who tried to get me into sales, they were like, oh, I think you'd be great at sales. You could sell anything. You got a good mouthpiece. And I was like, no, not my thing. I'm more of a creative. I like to dig into my Barney bag and see what I can make and all of that. And that's the side I actually get from my dad. He's a real creative, hands-on person. So I started to just, pursue that full time. And during that time, again, at the back of my mind, always having my mom in that work hard mentality, I made it a point that I was going to be a VP by the age of 30. That was my goal. And when I tell you, when I set a goal, everything just ties into that goal. So when my password on my computers was VP by 30. My phone was VP by 30. Like, I'm putting it out there in the universe because that's what I wanted. And so as a result of that, I just started to, work hard, be great in the roles that I was in, because that's first and foremost. You can't move up if you're horrible at what you're currently doing. And network, get to know people in the industry that I really wanted to be in, which was television. And, as my career just progressed, it just one opportunity led to the next, which led to the next and led to the next. And that's kind of what got me to where I am now. So what I'll say is I did not become a VP by the age of 30. I was a little bit older than that. I think I was maybe 32, but it helped me stay on track. It helped me to have a vision and a plan and set some actions and goals for myself that probably if I did not have that outline for myself, I probably wouldn't have worked as hard to achieve.
And we'll talk about like the mentors who helped you kind of navigate that in a second. But thinking back to that first job, right? So I know you've worked in Chicago, you've worked in New York, you've worked in a bunch of different markets. How did you go about getting it, right? So you're at Columbia and you're like, listen, I'm trying to be a VP at something by 30. Like, how did you go about some actual actions that you took to get that first job?
Sure. So I had met a guy actually that I was dating at the time in high school or in college, sorry. And he worked in the music industry. And he said to me, so you want to work in TV, who do you know? And I'm like, I don't know anybody. I'm in school. I don't know anybody. And he was like, well, you got to know someone to get in. And I said, well, who do you know then? And he said, well, I know somebody who works at MTV. I could connect you. And I said, okay, cool. So he connected me to that person who worked at MTV. He was a vice president of sales at the time. And we just had a phone conversation. And, our vibe was good on that phone call. And he said, listen, I'm going to take you on as my mentee and I'm going to teach you, some things here and there. And I said, okay, great. And when I tell you, he poured into me so much, he would be, he's a busy professional, traveling here and there as a salesperson. He would have 20 minutes before boarding his flight where he would call me and just talk to me about real life situations that he was doing during his day. Oh, I had this presentation to a client and I had this meeting and I had that meeting. And he was teaching me acronyms and things like that you don't get in school. He was sharing proprietary decks with me to help me like get a better understanding of how things are worded or what the strategy was and things like that. And so that really helped me a lot. And then from there, after I graduated college, I told him that I really wanted to move to New York. And he said, okay, well, let's try to find you a job in New York. And so we both started the hunt. And he actually met someone who was the head of marketing at SNY, Sportsnet New York, and at a conference. And he says, hey, my mentee is looking to move to New York. Can you talk to her? And she said, yeah, sure. I don't have any job openings, but I'm happy to, just talk to her. And so we set up a call. The call was great. We vibed. And again, she said, Tatiana, I don't have any job openings right now, but I'm happy to keep you in mind in case anything, comes up. And I said, okay, great. When I tell you this is where God comes in, it was a year to the day of me speaking to her that out of the blue, I get an email from her and she says, hey, Tatiana, did you ever move to New York? I have a job open. And I said, no, I didn't, but I'm still interested. I'm like, well, what's the job? And she was like, oh, well, sorry, I can't pay for relocation. So just pass this along to someone else. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, because if this is the right opportunity, I will pay for myself to get there. Yeah. And so she said, okay, well, let's talk. She was like, let's get on a call and we'll see. So we spoke, she interviewed me and it went great. And she told me, look, Tatiana, I think you would be great for this role. But again, I can't pay for relocation. So if you can get yourself here to New York next week, then I'll set you up with some job interviews. And here I am living in Atlanta at this time. I was working, but not making a whole lot of money. And I say, you know what? this is it. Like, I have to find my way to New
I love
York.
it. I love it.
So I had a colleague who lived in New York. She was at our New York office. And I said to her, girl, I have a job interview. Like, can I come crash on your couch? She was like, yeah, no problem. I found a round trip ticket for $120 and I flew out there. They set me up with 5 interviews in one day. And that Friday, I got the phone call that I got the job.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And when I tell you, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And I had 2 weeks to pack up and move to New York with no place to live, no money. I think I may have had $1,100 to my name. And that was about it. And I did everything I could. I found a roommate on roommates.com. I sold my car. I gave my dog away. Like, I did everything I could to get to New York. And I slummed it out for the first 3 months, living in a horrible roommate situation. But it got me a foot in the door, and I made a path for myself. I was one of the only African American in a managerial role. I was the only Black female in a managerial role. And here I am coming from Atlanta, moving into New York, which was working for SNY, which was a male white sports dominated industry. So, they were looking at me like, who is this chick?
And how did she get here?
And let me tell you, that was the question that was most asked of me. Who did you know? Who did you know to get this job?
Perfect. And on that note, Tatiana, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so excited to have you. And I'm sure we'll be doing some stuff together soon.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate this conversation, and I look forward to doing more as well.
Today's hot seat, our employee question. Do you have any advice for someone who is interviewing for their first executive role? I learned a lot from the I Choose a Ladder conference, which gave me the courage to apply for this job in the first place. Thank you for attending the conference. However, climbing the corporate ladder can still be a scary thing for someone who has no experience with high-level positions. Any advice is greatly appreciated. Well, first of all, the fact that people have seen your work and feel like you are ready to interview for a more senior role speaks a lot to you and what you've done. So kudos to you on that. So what I would say is have a clear understanding of what the success metrics are in that position, and also what competencies you need to be really great at, right? So is it relationships? Is it strategic planning? Is it problem solving? What is success measured by? I would also recommend Executive Presence, which is a book that you can read around, how executives show up. And then lastly, I would talk to people who have had senior roles that you may know, whether it's a mentor, a colleague, or what have you. I would have conversations about, what is the difference between perception and also like what is expected of people as they go from middle manager to senior leadership. You can talk to them about their transition and what they felt like helped them transition a little bit more successfully than others. But I would say be confident in your ability to show up, be confident in what you bring to the table because you are being welcomed to the table or invited to the table, and then just do your best work. That's all you can do. Do your research, prepare, and then go in and let them see who you are. Good luck. In today's manager questions, some of the Black women on my team feel left out because all of our client meetings tend to be taken on the golf course, and the majority of them don't know how to play golf. The game has a lot of rules and golf etiquette to learn before you can go out on serious courses. Some of our biggest clients are insistent on where the meetings are held. So my question is golf something that they should learn so that they can be included, or is it my responsibility to request meetings be held elsewhere when the client insists on the golf course? So this is a great question. What I would say is, yes, there's an understanding that a lot of times golf is where meetings happen. With that being said, if you understand as a manager that this could be a barrier to success for your employees, my question to you is, are you giving them resources or offering them the opportunity to learn to play golf as a form of professional development? So for me, if it's imperative for them to know golf for their job, I would have golf lessons, right? And we would pay for golf lessons so that they can then become more confident in their ability to play the game and then be welcome into those spaces. So I would say offer them the resources and also the option to say, hey, for, progression in this work, golf is something that you should learn if you want to be included in X, Y, and Z. Would you like to take lessons? And if they don't, that's okay, but at least they understand the implications for their career. But as their manager, if this is something that could cause them to not be successful in their role, I think it would be up to you to provide them with the resources to be able to develop so that they can progress professionally. All right, y'all, we have come to the end of our meeting, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch the episode. But really quick before we leave, I love to leave y'all with an affirmation to help you get through the week. And I am using my I Choose a Ladder Career Affirmations deck. If you don't have yours, head on over to choosealadder.com to get your set. Me pick the word for the week, and y'all know if I don't like it, I'm picking a new one, although that has not happened yet. So hopefully today is not the day. Let's see what it says. Oh, I'm a little nervous. My best is good enough for the season that I am in. My best is good enough for the season that I am in. I could dig it. I love that. And I think based on what we talked about today, it is an appropriate affirmation. You all know that I love to keep the conversation going. So as always, you can connect with me on Instagram at ICUWatching. And for career advice, you can connect with I Choose a Ladder on Instagram at I Choose a Ladder. And until next time, thank you for watching. Meeting adjourned.